Deep in the Arizona desert, the sun beat down mercilessly, casting long shadows over the cracked, sandy ground. It was a quiet morning in May 2015, and Chris Delaney, a 42-year-old hiker with a love for the outdoors, was trekking through a remote trail in the Sonoran Desert with his dog Dusty, a scrappy Australian Shepherd-Labrador mix. Chris had walked these paths countless times, always marveling at the stark beauty of the landscape. The towering cacti, the distant mountains, the endless stretch of golden sand. But today felt different. Dusty, usually calm and obedient, started acting strange about a mile into their hike. His ears perked up, his nose twitching as he darted toward a jagged rock half buried in the sand. Chris watched, curious, as Dusty began pawing at the ground, whining softly like he'd caught a scent he couldn't ignore. "What is it, boy?" Chris muttered, kneeling down to see what had gotten his dog so worked up. He brushed away the loose dirt, expecting maybe a buried bone or a piece of trash left by another hiker. But his fingers hit something hard and cold. A rusty metal suitcase, its edges weathered by time, half hidden beneath the rock. Chris's heart skipped a beat. With a grunt, he pried the suitcase free, the hinges creaking as he lifted the lid. Inside, neatly folded and eerily preserved, was a stack of red and white cheerleading uniforms, their fabric faded but unmistakable. Chris felt a chill run down his spine. He'd grown up in Chandler, Arizona, and like everyone else in town, he knew the story of the 6 cheerleaders who vanished after a basketball game in 1995. April and Amber Green, Kira Thompson, Hannah, Lee Rachel Collins and Lily Rivera. Their disappearance had haunted the community for 2 decades, a mystery that refused to die. Could this suitcase be the key to finally solving it? And what dark secrets were buried with those uniforms, waiting to be uncovered after 20 long years? To understand the weight of this chilling discovery, we have to go back to that fateful night in 1995, when 6 families' lives were shattered forever. What's up, story lovers? Welcome to Storyroom by Rico, where we bring you gripping tales that'll keep you hooked. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a story. Also, let us know in the comments section where you are watching from. It was February 14th, 1995, a chilly Valentine's Day evening in Chandler, Arizona. The Chandler High School gym was alive with excitement, the air thick with the smell of popcorn and the sound of sneakers squeaking on the court. The boys' basketball team had just clinched a nail-biting victory against their rivals, winning 72-70 in the final seconds. The crowd erupted in cheers, and all eyes turned to the cheerleading squad as they launched into their final routine of the night. 6 girls in red and white uniforms dazzled the audience with their flips and chants, their smiles lighting up. The gym, April and Amber Green, 14-year-old twins with matching freckles and dreams of becoming professional dancers, led the squad with confidence. Kira Thompson, 15, known for her daring stunts, flipped through the air with ease. Hannah Lee, 14, the quiet one, kept perfect rhythm with her pom-poms. Rachel Collins, 15, brought energy to every move, while Lily Rivera, 14, the youngest, had a spark that made everyone adore her. They waved to the crowd, soaking in the applause, then huddled together, giggling as they planned to grab milkshakes at the diner across the street. Their parents, watching from the stands, smiled with pride. Marissa and David Green, the twins' parents, reminded the girls to call when they were ready to be picked up. "We'll be home soon, Mom," April shouted, her voice full of joy. But as the gym emptied and the families headed to their cars, the girls never made it to that diner. Hours passed with no word. By 10 p.m., Marissa was pacing the living room, her stomach in knots. David called the diner. No one had seen the girls. By midnight, the police were involved, and a frantic search began. Volunteers combed the streets, flashlights slicing through the darkness, but there was nothing. No bags, no footprints, no sign of the 6 girls. It was as if they'd vanished into thin air. What happened in those crucial hours after the game, and why did it take 20 years for the first real clue to surface? Let's dive into the night of the disappearance, because the details, or lack thereof, paint a picture of a mystery that baffled everyone. The basketball game ended around 8 p.m., and the girls were last seen near the gym's side exit, chatting and laughing as they packed up their gear. A few witnesses remembered seeing a man in a dark jacket lingering nearby, his face obscured by a baseball cap. One parent thought he might have been a fan, but a janitor later told police the man seemed nervous, glancing at the girls too often for it to be innocent. The team's coach, Vincent Carraway, a 35-year-old former athlete with a winning smile, claimed he'd sent the girls off to the diner around 8:15 p.m. He said he'd stayed behind to lock up the gym, then left through the front entrance. But his story didn't quite add up. One of the players' mums, Linda Thompson, remembered seeing Carraway leave through the side exit around the same time the girls did, not the front. When pressed by police, Carraway brushed it off, saying he might have forgotten which door he used. The police searched everywhere, the diner, the school grounds, even a nearby lake where someone reported seeing a car idling that night. But there was nothing. Not a single trace of the girls' red and white duffel bags, their pom-poms, or their sneakers. Search parties grew, with hundreds of volunteers combing the town for weeks. Marissa and David put up flyers with the twins, smiling faces, their blue eyes staring out from every telephone pole in Chandler. But as spring turned to summer and summer to fall, hope faded. The case went cold, leaving the families in a limbo of grief and unanswered questions. Was that man in the dark jacket a key to the mystery? And what was Coach Carraway really doing that night? Now let's talk about Vincent Carraway, because his role in this story is a tangled web of charm and suspicion. In 1995, Carraway was a local legend in Chandler. He'd been coaching the cheer squad for nearly a decade, taking a small, underfunded team and turning it into a regional powerhouse. Parents loved him. He was the kind of coach who remembered every kid's birthday, who brought homemade cookies to practice, who made every girl feel like a star. But there was another side to Carraway that few saw back then. Some of the girls had whispered about him over the years, saying he could be intense, even scary. One former cheerleader, Emily Parker, who quit the squad in 1994, later told investigators she'd felt uneasy around him. "He'd watch us change sometimes," she said, her voice trembling, "not in a creepy way, at least not at first, but it felt wrong." Emily's parents had brushed it off, thinking she was overreacting, and Carraway had apologized, blaming a misunderstanding. But there were other red flags. Carraway had a temper, especially when the girls didn't perform up to his standards. One time, he'd thrown a clipboard across the gym after a botched routine, leaving the team in tears. When the girls vanished, Carraway was front and center, organizing search parties and speaking to the media with tears in his eyes. "Those girls are like my own daughters," he'd said on the local news, his voice breaking. "I'll do anything to bring them home." But some parents, like Susan Collins, started to question his sincerity. Why had he left the gym so quickly that night? And why did he seem so nervous when the police asked for his alibi? As we'll see, Carraway's perfect image was hiding a much darker truth, one that would unravel everything. Let's fast forward to 2015, when Chris Delaney's discovery in the desert blew the case wide open. After finding the suitcase, Chris called the Chandler Police Department, his hands shaking as he described what he'd found. Within hours, the remote desert site was crawling with officers, yellow crime scene tape fluttering in the wind. Detective Liam Hulbrook, a seasoned investigator who'd worked the original case in 1995, arrived on the scene, his graying hair a testament to the years he'd spent haunted by this mystery. The cheerleading uniforms inside the suitcase were a perfect match for the ones the girls had worn that night, red and white, with the Chandler High logo stitched in gold thread. Marissa Green, who'd been called to the station with the other parents broke down when she saw the uniforms projected on a screen in the conference room. "That's April's," she whispered, pointing to a tiny tear on the sleeve. "She ripped it during practice a week before they were gone." But something didn't add up. Forensic analysis showed the suitcase had only been buried within the last year, not 20 years ago. The uniforms, though faded, were in decent condition, suggesting they'd been stored somewhere else for most of that time. Why would someone bury them now, after all these years? Detective Holbrook had a theory. Whoever did this might have been spooked by renewed interest in the case. A local news station had run a 20-year anniversary piece on the disappearance just a few months earlier, stirring up old memories. Maybe the person responsible, or someone who knew them, panicked and decided to get rid of the evidence. But that only raised more questions. Who had access to those uniforms after all this time, and what else might be buried in that desert waiting to be found? As the investigation heated up, the police turned their attention to Vincent Carraway, and what they uncovered was a house of cards ready to collapse. Back in 1995, Carraway had told everyone he'd sold his company, Carraway Performance and Fitness, or CPF, to a businessman named Matthew Rands. He claimed he'd stepped away completely, focusing on coaching and community work. But in 2015, financial records told a different story. Carraway hadn't sold CPF. He just put it in Rands' name to create a layer of separation, while still running the show behind the scenes. CPF wasn't just a fitness company, it was a front for a massive drug trafficking operation stretching from Arizona to Nevada. The company's vans, often seen at cheer events loaded with equipment, were actually used to move product, hidden compartments stuffed with cash and illegal substances. Old police reports from the 90s started resurfacing too, painting a troubling picture of Carraway's behavior. One girl, who'd been on the squad in 1993, had filed a complaint saying Carraway made inappropriate comments about her body during practice. Her parents dropped the complaint after Carraway apologized, but the report was there, buried in the archives. Another parent had called the school in 1994, saying Carraway had been overly physical during a team huddle, but no one followed up. At the time, these were seen as isolated incidents. Carraway was too well-liked, too respected. But now, with the suitcase in play, those old complaints took on a new, sinister meaning. Was Carraway's charm just a mask for something much darker? And how did his drug operation connect to the girl's disappearance? The investigation took a dangerous turn when Marissa and David Green decided to take matters into their own hands. They'd been following the news about the suitcase, but felt the police were moving too slowly. One scorching afternoon, they drove out to the desert site where the suitcase was found, hoping to feel closer to their daughters. As they parked near a ridge, Marissa spotted something in the distance, a beat-up truck parked off a dirt road with 3 men moving around it. One was dragging a heavy sack, the kind you'd use for grain, while another was digging in the sand near a cluster of rocks. The third man stood watch, scanning the horizon. Marissa's gut told her something was wrong. "David, look," she whispered, pointing. David squinted against the sun. "They don't look like hikers." Without thinking, Marissa started walking toward them, her heart pounding. David grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? We should call the police." But Marissa shook him off. "By the time they get here, those men could be gone. I need to know if this has anything to do with our girls." As they got closer, one of the men spotted them and shouted something to the others. They dropped what they were doing, scrambled into the truck, and sped off, kicking up a cloud of dust. Marissa ran to the spot where they'd been digging, her hands trembling as she sifted through the sand. That's when she saw it. A small, tarnished earring shaped like a star with a red gem in the center. She gasped, clutching it to her chest. "David, this is Amber's earring. I gave these to the twins for their 13th birthday." David's eyes widened as he took the earring, turning it over in his palm. In the chaos, Marissa remembered the truck. It had a logo on the back window, a stylized bird with the letters CPF, Caraway Performance and Fitness. They raced back to Detective Holbrook with the earring, and he immediately sent a team to follow the truck's tire tracks. Those tracks would lead them to a place that held the darkest secrets of all. The tire tracks stretched across the desert, winding through narrow dirt roads until they stopped at Laughing Ranch, a sprawling property 10 miles outside Chandler. Gerald Laufinger, a wealthy businessman in his 60s, had bought the ranch in the early 90s, around the same time Caraway started CPF. To the outside world, it was a normal operation. Horses grazed in the fields, workers tended to cattle, and Laufinger hosted charity events for the community. But when the police raided the ranch, they found something that turned their stomachs. Hidden beneath a barn, behind a locked metal door, was an underground bunker, a concrete prison lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Inside were 3 women, now in their 30s, their skin pale from years without sunlight, their eyes hollow with trauma. They were April Green, Kira Thompson, and Hannah Lee, 3 of the 6 missing cheerleaders, alive after 20 years of captivity. The other 3, Amber, Rachel, and Lily, hadn't survived. April, her voice trembling, told the police what had happened. On the night of the basketball game, Caraway had lured the girls back to the gym under the pretense of a team meeting. He drugged them with sedatives, loaded them into a CPF van, and brought them to the ranch, where Laufinger and Rands were waiting. Caraway had been obsessed with the girls, calling them his special girls, and kept them locked in the bunker as his personal prisoners. Laufinger managed the day-to-day, providing food and supplies, while Rands handled the logistics of their captivity, all while using the ranch as a hub for their drug trafficking operation. The girls had tried to escape once, 3 years earlier. Amber and Lily had stolen a keycard from a guard and led the group toward the barn's exit, but an alarm went off and Caraway's men caught them. Amber and Lily paid the ultimate price for their bravery, a punishment so horrific the survivors couldn't speak of it without breaking down. Rachel had passed away years later from an infection, her pleas for medical help ignored. How had this gone on for so long, right under the town's nose? And what finally brought the truth to light? The raid on Laufinger Ranch marked the beginning of justice for the girls and their families, but it was a long, painful road. After the discovery of the bunker, the police arrested Laufinger and his men on the spot. A manhunt began for Vincent Caraway, who'd fled Chandler the moment he heard about the suitcase. Highway Patrol caught him 2 days later, trying to cross into New Mexico in a stolen car, his trunk stuffed with cash and fake IDs. Matthew Rands was arrested at his home in Phoenix, his office filled with records that tied CPF to the drug operation and to the girls' captivity. During the trial, which gripped the nation for months, April, Kira, and Hannah gave heartbreaking testimony. April described how Caraway would visit the bunker every month, selecting one of the girls to spend time with him, his voice dripping with false affection as he called them his special girls. Kira spoke of the beatings they endured. If they disobeyed, her voice steady, but her hands shaking. Hannah revealed how they'd clung to hope in the early years, whispering to each other about their families, but how that hope had faded as the years dragged on. The cheerleading uniforms had been buried recently because Caraway got nervous after the 20-year anniversary news story. He'd ordered Laufinger to dispose of any remaining evidence, but Laufinger's men were careless, leaving the suitcase in a shallow grave where Dusty could find it. Caraway, Laufinger, and Rands were all sentenced to life in prison, their empire of drugs and terror finally dismantled. For the families, the outcome was bittersweet. Marissa and David Green held April close, helping her adjust to a world that had changed so much in 20 years, while mourning Amber's loss. Kira and Hannah reunited with their parents, who'd never stopped searching, but the pain of losing Rachel and Lily lingered for Susan Collins and the Riveras. The town of Chandler, was forever changed, its innocence shattered by the horror that had lurked in its shadows for 2 decades. But for the survivors and their families, there was a quiet strength in knowing the truth, and in knowing that the girls' voices, silenced for so long, had finally been heard. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more. We'd love to hear what you think. For more gripping mysteries, check out our playlist for videos you will like.